Hey guys, Jensen here once again, and for day 5 of the 2021 World Championship group stages, I wanted to take a look at the Malphite Oriana, dubbed as the Bronzodia composition, the 100 Ds put off against T1, and I dubbed it as the Sunday Clash composition and why it didn't work, right? And this gives you a blueprint all sorts of how to beat it when you reach the team fighting phase of the game. Now, what's the big idea behind this composition? This was a composition that was drafted by 100 Thieves, Malphite in the top lane, Lee Sin in the jungle, Orianna in mid lane, Astra AD carry, and Leona support. It's rather simple. You group, you press R, you win fight, right? This is the type of things that you would actually do pretty well at most lower levels of play and in Clash as well. But what are the weaknesses of this composition? Firstly, it's susceptible to getting attacked in the jungle because you actually have three lanes here that usually end up losing the lane of sorts, and you have to give priority and you're weak on the silence as well. And usually at the lower levels of play, it is possible to get away with these two traits, as it requires a very well drilled team to be able to exploit these two windows accordingly. Now in the T1 game, they weren't necessarily able to exploit that, so we are just going to be talking about how the teamfight interactions occur between what 100 Ts had drafted and T1. Now, there's three types of broad categories where you can classify a composition's ability to teamfight. There's the all-in, there's the pick and disengage, and there's the kite and re-engage. And of these three styles, there's a rock paper scissors dynamic. Although it's not a hard counter or sorts in general, kite and re-engage is favored against all-in compositions that have to engage into a composition that will kite back and then re-engage onto the opponents after they have extended. There's then the um, all-in compositions that are effective against pick and disengage, who want to go in, and then you are able to rapidly chase them down, preventing them from exiting. And pick and disengage is good at attacking the periphery of kite compositions and picking champions off. Now, the big idea behind playing pick and disengage, however, requires you to be able to play on multiple lanes, rotate between them, and force manpower advantages. So usually when you have this style of composition, it's not necessarily the best, as you're not able to find the early game leads to be able to execute this, and as you're weak on side lanes, you don't really have a strong option to then rotate between two lanes and hold and protect the waves as well. Now, um, between card and re-engage and all-in, the opponent composition actually influences the mode of team fight. And if we were to examine the effective area of influence of all these champions, the Jason Zoe drafted by T1 in this situation does put them in a scenario where they then have a significant range advantage over 100 Thieves. So this means the 100 Thieves are then forced to play the all-in side of the matchup against T1's kite and re-engage. Now, if we were to examine how this happened in the drafting phase, this is something that happens quite often, right? Where you just look at things and say that, hey, in team fights, Malphite is good against Jace, Orianna is good against Zoe, Astra is good against Aphelios, especially at the two item spikes once they reach the middle portion of the game. But overall, the stylistic, holistic composition takes precedence in terms of how these things end up. Now, of course, at the lower level, you will see people clumping for no reason, and you will be able to execute on these huge wombo combo default outs. But I want to show you how T1 executes this, right? And there's a few big concepts here. The first is the way that they stagger their positions in team fights, where you don't have everybody clumping up, and it then creates a singular point to which they can attack their opponent. So if you see here, Zoe is in the point of attack in a much more forward-facing position, and she's looking to throw a poke at the opponents. And at the same time, if anybody goes onto the Zoe, you're only going onto one person, and the Philos, together with the Jace, will be able to back the Zoe up on that engage. And in this scenario over here, setting up for neutral objectives. When you play these style kite compositions, you want to start poking up your opponent so you can get two big rotations on them as they face check into you. So you always want to be starting from a very forward position, as far forward as the line bush. And even though this looks like they're really disconnected from the rest of the team, the Aphelios is in the top bush at this point of time, and they aren't really able to get a good engagement to both Zoe and Jace. And these are the small things that you can keep in mind of, right? Firstly, you identify where the engage is coming from, and then you hug the walls and kite parallel to the direction of the engage, like what Faker and Kana does in this situation. So this entire time, people are saying that, oh, why isn't 100 Thieves going in? Because it's so difficult to find an angle, even if somebody does land the ulti onto Faker. Right, Kana is in position to follow up for damage, the Aphelios is right behind him, and they aren't getting the big, massive wombo combo that they're looking for, that they need in order to win this team fight. So could things be different in T1's victory of 100 Thieves, right? It doesn't mean that once they find themselves in the all-in position, you cannot beat a kite and re-engage composition. Now, this isn't necessarily true, as um, you are always able to find better setups, or you can approach from multiple angles via sideline or TP. And if they did change some things in the draft by giving themselves some reset champions, it is also possible for all-in composition to be the Kaider re-engage composition. So if you're drafting this in Clash, champions like Viego that's able to get all these free spells, right? If you go in there, you kill one champion, you get the free spells, and you're able to then reset and then continue to chase down the other members of the opposition. Tristana is a very common AD carry that's able to fulfill this role as well. However, for 100 Thieves, they were not afforded any of this in the draft for themselves. So a lot of people on social media were saying that, oh, 100 Thieves was playing scared, why is something not engaging? Malphite only uses ulti, I believe, twice in the entire game. And the truth of it is that T1 did a fantastic job of spreading themselves out and not really giving 100 Thieves a great angle to go in. And this is kind of a masterclass of how to play against this Bronzodia composition, where it's all about pressing R, stagger yourselves, make sure that you're quite parallel to the engage, and ensure that you have the formation so that you have the stagger bounce to follow up after the opponent's initial engage. And that kind of wraps it up for the learning point of sorts from day 5 of the group stage for the 2021 World Championship. Um, if you do get to play this composition in Clash, I have to say the burden of execution is usually a lot easier if you're playing Dimorphin or Rihanna. But we'll have to see. Are more teams going to be going through this path? And some people also suggested that going for Everfrost and Malphite might be able to compensate for his inability to really push out and attack a side lane. And in that scenario, maybe this might be good when 100 Ds are able to access multiple angles. And with that, this is Jensen. If you enjoy this style of content, please do consider giving this video a like and subscribing to my YouTube channel. It really helps me out a lot. And with that, I hope you had a nice day and get hyped for Worlds.